Hey there, welcome to my channel. Let's continue with our episode. So in this episode today, we are going to discuss about some of the very important use cases for our order and the catalog microservice, right? So you can see here in this diagram, so each microservice has its own bounded context and where we are defining our logical boundary, and it is performing their own operations within that particular boundary itself, right? But can you see both the microservice has some common things, right? Both the microservices, they need to talk to each other. They need to communicate with each other some of the way where they can exchange certain data, right? So you can see in the catalog microservice, it has some responsibility in terms of like where we can manage the product, we can listing the product, and we can manage the stock management in terms of like where stock inventory, etc. We can manage it right there, right? And while it comes to manage the stock, it is exposing some kind of interface to other application as well as other microservices as well as where it can be aggregate the availability of the product and the stock, right? So our order microservice can communicate with that particular channel and they can get the availability of the particular product. So it can proceed further with the placing an order, creating the cart, etc. Right? So let's try to understand each and every bit of all these things together. So while we are creating the card in the order microservice, then we are accepting certain numbers of elements from our front end. As an example, we're accepting customer ID, and we're accepting the product ID, all right, and we are accepting the quantity, right? So these are the three parameters we are going to accept from our front end, right? So while we're creating the card, then what we are going to do, we're going to communicate with our catalog microservice. We will be going to say, hey, catalog service, please give me the product details by providing by this product ID, right? Then the catalog microservice is going to provide that particular product details. Then we will check it out. Do we have any stock available for that particular product to create a card? Yes, we have the stock available, then create the card. If we don't have any stock available for that particular product, then you will going to say to the front end from the order service, the product is unavailable, right? Product is not available yet. So then we are going to say to the front end, the product is not available. It's out of stock right now, right? So this is the way we are going to communicate with the catalog service. This is the first thing. And second thing, you can see once we have added to the cart, while we are adding to the cart, then we know what are the stock, right? And during that time, maybe some order already placed or something is there, right? Then we just try to manage our cart. Let's say we are trying to increase the quantity. Then do we really have the particular stock available in our product, right? In the catalog service, right? We need approximately 2 more units of that particular product. So do you have that stock available right now? Then catalog service is gonna say yes, we have the stock. Let's go ahead. Then we are going to convert that particular cart to the order, and we are going to place the order. So now we have converted the cart to the order. So as soon as we are converted the cart to the order, we are creating the order, right? So while we're creating the order, we need to let the catalog service know that we have created one order with this particular product ID and we have a quantity of certain numbers, right? Then those numbers has to be deducted from the stock as well as, right? So catalog service is responsible to take care of managing that particular stock management or stock inventory, right? Then order service need to communicate with the catalog service. Now in this scenario, we have 2 communications are happening. One is the synchronized communication where we're simply just calling that the catalog service and waiting for the response, right? Because those are the things are needed. Unless we are getting the product details, we cannot move forward to create the card, right? Unless we are getting the product details or availability of the stock, then we cannot manage the card, right? This is purely dependent, right? We need that particular data, then only we can perform that certain operation. So this calls, right? This type of communication, we can say synchronized communication, right? So while we are creating the order, then order service is not caring about whether the catalog service is going to manage the stock or not, right? So what exactly it will do? It will simply fire one event, right? And it will forget everything, right? So it doesn't matter whether the catalog service is taken care or not. It is not responsibility of the order service. The only responsibility is to do order service that just lets inform to the catalog service, like we have created this order, quantity of 10 or something, right? Then you just deduct the stuff from there, right? And another thing, can you see? We have created our card and we kept this card for a long time. Let's say you have created one card from you might have seen in the most of the online portal or maybe e-commerce portal. As an example, Amazon, right? Amazon, you have added some items to the cart, or maybe some other online vendors or the e-commerce website you can see. You have added to the cart, and after a few days, let's say you kept this whole item to the cart for maybe 2 or 3 days, then you realize like there is a kind of message or something is displaying right there. See, the item you have selected, it is out of stock right now, or maybe 1 left, 2 left. So how this kind of mechanism is happening? So this is really strange, right? But nothing to worry. So we will explain that one as well. So as soon as we are, let's say we are maybe a user, let's try to have a look at that scenario, right? So as an example, this is user A. User A has a cart, right? Then user A have added some kind of item. As an example, we have added the product ID A, product ID A123. This is the product ID as an example, right? Product ID. Okay. Then the similar product ID we are going to also use for user B also, right? B also. So the user A has created a cart along with the product ID. As an example, it has the quantity of 10, right? And we have total stock. We have, let's say, 20 items. Then user B is coming to the cart, like, user B also a new customer just coming right there, and it's just to try to creating the cart. And this time it says like it is going to order the quantity of the 12, right? And how many items we have total? Total we have the 20 items as an example, right? And when user A has created, then it is calling to the catalog service and looking at the product details. It is checking it out, like whether we have the stock of minimum 10 or not. It says yes, we have the 10 items already there. We have 20 items, all right, go for it, right? Then he has added and he's just laying down this cardboard for 2 days, right? During these 2 days, right, the user B came to the picture, right? And user B already ordered 12 items, let's say. And while user B is just chosen that card, right? Then it is looking for again the product details. It's gonna say, hey, catalog service, do you have 12 items? It says yes, we have 20 items. Let's go for it. Then we have added this to 12 item right there, and user B is not waiting for a long time. He just created the order, right? Now how many items has left? Now we have left only 8 items in the catalog service stock management, right? Then as soon as this created the card, created the order, then it is just like publish some kind of events to the catalog service, and catalog service updated the stock. It says like only 8 left. Now can you see user A has 10 items in this cart. Then next day, right after that, user A again coming back and he's just try to place the order. Then how it can be possible? It's not going to be possible, right? Then between this one, while A is coming back, at the time somehow the catalog service need to notify to the order service, hey, you have selected this item. Right now it is only 8 left. So this order cannot be fulfilled. This cart cannot be fulfilled. So this particular communication has to be handled in the order service as well as. So that's why, can you see, we need to introduce some kind of message broker. This is kind of synchronized communication, and this is going to be asynchronous communication. So while we are going to manage the stock, then it will going to power some kind of events as well as, right? Say, hey, product ID A123 has deducted, like stock has gone like beyond let's say 10, right? Maybe right now it is only 8 is left. So as soon as it is deducted, then it is going to fire some kind of event. Then if already that particular product ID is created somewhere in the card or something, then we need to notify like, hey, this product only 10 left or 20 left or something like that, right? So this is how we are going to, our order service also going to consume that particular event, and we can manage the card. So next time that the user A will come to the picture, or A is coming back and he just try to continue with the card, then it's gonna say, no, it cannot be possible. Your order is sold out, like your item is sold out, only 8 is left, right? So this kind of scenarios are handling in the e-commerce application such a way, right? So another scenario also we can have, like while we're just creating the order, then we can again verify the stock availability, right? This is often happening, this is not often happening in the e-commerce. This is happening often in the most demandable products in terms of like maybe airlines ticket, right? The train tickets, right? It's real time, like within few minutes, the product stock is getting updated, or maybe price is getting updated. So all those scenarios, we are just again verifying right before creating the order. We will checking out like what is the updated price, updated stock, right? Based on that, we are having the validation, right? Then we can just create the order, right? This is quite common in the airlines industry, all right? Maybe if you see, and then if you have experience, then you can see like there's a kind of pop-up is coming like, hey, price got a little bit raised, all right? So would you like to go with the new price or not? Something like that. All right, so I know it's a lot of talk, right? But I just want to clear the picture how this kind of like communications are happening between a microservice and what are the ways we can implement, right? So while we are having certain data are needed from another microservice, then we are going with the synchronized communication. It can be as if in many ways. You can implement the HTTP. You can implement with the gRPC or maybe RPC, all right? So or maybe you can call like another way also, maybe WebSocket also you can use, right? There are a lot of ways you can achieve this synchronized communication. In asynchronous communication also similar way, like you can use any kind of message broker. This is not necessarily need to be message broker. Sometimes you can use HTTP as well, as if you're smart enough to handle like how without implementing the message broker, how we can communicate with like a parent forget way, right? Then in that scenario already I have another series in Nodejs Microservice using JavaScript mostly. So there I have already explained like how we can achieve this kind of stuff with the help of the webhooks, right? Perfect. So now I think we are pretty much clear in this scenario, right? All right, then let's try to cover all these use cases one by one. First, we are going to cover the synchronized communication. Then we're going to cover the asynchronous communication. Then end of the day, both the microservice can communicate with each other accordingly. Recently, I have introduced one new section in my YouTube channel that is called Weekly Tips, where you will get a lot of useful information within 60 seconds. And I have already answered a lot of questions right there, and I hope you can find it very helpful for you. All right, so let's jump into the source code. So here in the source code, you can see we have plenty of routes, right? So where we are just creating our card, getting card, deleting and editing card, right? So if you see in the diagram, so what we are going to do, these two pieces, right? Where we will be going to establish the synchronized communications between these two services, right? So let's try to do that. And now, right before creating the card, this is not magically we are doing something extra. We are simply accepting the input from our front end, all right, or maybe client, and we are just creating the card. So right before creating the card, we need to validate our user request, right, from the request body. And we are pretty much writing the functional programming code, so definitely we are not going to use the class validator. Maybe we can use similar like that, right? There are tons of libraries are available out there. In our case, we are going to use the Sinclair Typebox and AJV, another JSON validator. So these are the two libraries we are going to use that for validating our request, right? So let's try to install all these libraries, right? So here, right now I'm inside this catalog service. Let's jump into our order service, right? First of all, let's try to install if we have any pending dependencies right here. So if you go here, you can see we're going to add this Sinclair Typebox, and it has pretty nice documentation. So let's try to install this one. Copy, and here add Sinclair Typebox, and we're going to add the AJV also, another JSON validator. So here we can find it from here, right? So this one, right? So by using the combination of both, it can be fairly validated, and it can create your DTO objects very nicely, right? To create the validation, all this DTO stuff, we need to create one directory. Let's try to create one directory. It's called DTO, right? DTO. Inside this DTO directory, we're going to create one file. This is going to be our card request. Let's try to keep it like this way. Request DTO.ts, right? And here we are going to create one schema, all right? So that particular schema we will be using to validate our incoming request data. And based on that particular schema, we are going to generate some kind of static type as well as, right? All right, so export const card request schema equal to type, right? and type is coming from Sinclair type box, and we're going to say let's try to create one object here, right? So inside object we need to add some kind of the inputs, right? So what are the inputs? It's going to be necessary, as I said in the diagrams. If you see here, only few things are needed. That is going to be customer ID, product ID, and quantity, nothing else, all right? Because we will not accept the price or additional parameters from our front end, because it can be injected by user by inspecting the elements or like tweaking that particular request also. So we are not going to do that. What we are going to do, we're going to call our catalog service to get the product details based on the product ID, right? So let's try to do that, right? So in this case, product ID will be our product ID will be number. So a number, how we can make this particular number required, right? So we need to tell to our validator like this particular product ID will be necessary, right? You cannot make it optional. So if you go to this documentation of the Sinclair, then you can see, can you see we are creating the type as a string, right? Actually, can you see type optional, and inside the optional we need to define the type as well. So that means the name will become optional then, right? So this similar way we can utilize, but in our case the product ID is necessary. So let's try to keep it like type will be integer, right? Integer, right? Then second thing is going to be needed, or customer ID. So why customer ID is needed? We are not using any kind of the authentication pattern for our microservice as of now, right? So you can grab this customer ID from JWT token or something, and if you're implementing JWT token, then make sure you are accepting from there. But in my case, we are not using that one. That's why I need to provide this customer ID, right? So again, this type will be our integer, yeah. Then one more parameter is going to be needed. This is called quantity, all right? Quantity also type will be integer, right? So this is our schema, right? As I said, the schema is necessary for validating the request inputs, right? So, and then what we need to do, we need to generate one static type that can be used to create our card, right? Let's try to generate that one also. Export type will be card request input, right? And we will say static, and inside here is going to be type of and card request schema, right? Perfect. So our card request schema is ready, right? So let's try to copy all these things, and let's add the edit schema as well, as because we're going to handle both the functionality, right? So card edit request schema. So in our case here, this product ID is not required. This is going to be ID, and card edit request will be here, card edit request schema, and this is going to be edit. Right, perfect. So our schema is ready. And so now we can use that schema to validate our request. But how we can validate it, right? So we need to create one file. So let's go ahead here inside this util directory, just to create a new file here. It's called validator.ts, right? So inside this validator, we are going to use our another JSON validator, like its name is another JSON validator. The short form is called AJV. So you can say import AJV from AJV, right? So this is what we are going to use to validate. All right, so let me add some code quickly, then I'll explain it to you. All right, so let's try to understand what we did here. So we have imported the AJV and we have created one new instance of the AJV. This function is a kind of generic function, which is going to accept generic type here. It can be edit request schema. If you go here in the card DTO, you can see, let's go to DTO here. It can be like the card request schema it can be, or maybe card edit request schema. So can you see the properties are different, right? So, but this validator function exactly it's going to accept like that only, right? And At the end of the day, it is just compiling that particular schema based on the type, and it is generating one function where you can validate that particular request body with this, right? And if it is finding that everything is going well, then it is returning false, right? And if there's something is wrong, right? There's a kind of validation errors are there, then it'll just like provide that particular error. So what we are doing while we're validating the data, it may have multiple errors. So we just try to map it together, and we are just try to send all the errors, because if you see the error object, if you see here, you can see it has a lot of stuff, right? We don't want everything, right? We are only interested in the message. So that's why we're just keeping the message here. So at least we can have a kind of array of the string. So if error is it's a kind of error of array of the string, right? And end of the day, we are returning it. We are checking it out if we have errors and that particular index, it has a value, then return it, right? This is the way the validator is working. All right, so now let's implement our validator here, right? First of all, I will be used the try catch to wrap it up this whole statement. Yeah, perfect. So now here, what we can do, we can, if any kind of errors are there, maybe we can throw some kind of errors, right? So return res.status, and we will potentially say 404 and JSON, and we can say error. Right? This is not a convenient way to sending the error. Maybe in the later stage, we can minimize this error to a meaningful error message, right? And here, what we are going to do, we'll be creating our error, and this is going to be validate request, and here, as we have seen in the validate request, if you go here, can you see this schema particular generic, we are just passing right here. So this is the thing we need to pass it here, right? So what kind of schema we are going to use, right? So this is going to be our card request input, right? And inside the card request input, what we are going to pass it on here, first of all, our request body, request body dot. Right, so this is the part we are passing right here. And then one more thing we need to pass, this is going to be our schema, card request schema. Cool. So now we can see we have some kind of error. If we have any kind of error, then we can throw it out from here. And if there is no any error, then we can utilize that schema, right? And how we can do that? So we will check it out. If we have error, then return. This is the same kind of error message we are going to return it, but in this case the error will be error. So let's try to make it generic error, right? Perfect. So now if we are facing any kind of error, then we will be returned from here. Otherwise we will be consume this request body right here, right? Perfect. So now we have handled our errors here, right? So while we are just creating the card, at that time, we are accepting input as any, right? That is what we don't want, right? So instead of this input any, so we need to use some kind of static type, right? That is already we have been created here. Can you see? This is the thing, right? So this is the card request input we're going to use in service as well as. So create card. Let's try to use this one. Card request input, right? And now if you go here in the create card, right? This is request body. This is perfectly fine, but let's try to cast it as card request input. Now we have handled our validate request for our create card, right? Now, right before creating the card, let's try to have a look how we are going to create the card. If you see this diagram right here, right? So while we are just creating the card, and then we need to have the product details, because from the request, what we are accepting the customer ID and product ID. We don't have the proper information of the product information in terms of like the price or product name or something or variants. We don't have anything right here, right? So what we can do, let's go ahead here again into the source code. So here in this create card, right before inserting data to our repository, we need to make a call to get the product details to our catalog microservice, right? So here what we are going to do, make a call to our right? Make a call to our catalog microservice, and this call will be a kind of synchronized call, right? Synchronized call, right? So right before making this sync call, what we can do, we can test it out, like if we are perfectly able to insert the data or not, or this catalog route, this card route is it's able to validate the request or not. We need to check it out, right? So let's try to do that. In this case, I'm already inside this order service, so I'm going to run yarn dev, right? And my server is running in port 9000, so make sure you are using proper environment variable, right? So what we can do, maybe we can our catalog service is going to be 9001, and this is going to be our 9002. Let's say 9002, maybe 9000. I'm going to use some other work, so I don't want to interrupt that particular port. So yarn dev. Okay, right now it's 9002, and if I'm going to Postman, I will be this order service 9002. Perfect. So what I'm going to do, I will be not sending this this product ID, right? That is required, but I just want to check it out, like whether our validation is working or not, right? So in this case, if I'm going to send, can you see must have a required property product ID? So this validation, where exactly is coming from? This validation is coming from here, card route, the validated request, right? Perfect. So now you can see we are perfectly able to validate the request, right? So we are not providing a product ID correctly. That's why it is showing this message, right? The must have a required property product ID. And if you're uncomment this one, then definitely this particular call has to go through. But right now we are not running the Docker Compose correctly, then maybe definitely it will deny to connect with our database. But that's a good sign, right? So can you see, like still our validation is right now it's got passed, and it is hanging up right there in connection reviews. That means it is perfectly able to call our this call, right? So if you go here, this call is going through right now, and it is able to create the card, and here exactly it is giving the error. Perfect. So now we are going to add some code into communications between our catalog microservice and order microservice, right? So in this case, you can see we have another directory that is called util, all right? So inside this util directory, we can add one more directory. This is called broker, right? And inside broker, we are going to create one file. This is going to be index.ts, and one more file we are going to create. This is going to be our api.ts. So here we are going to export const get right. Then we are going to export everything from API to index. API. And while we are going to call this API, then certainly we need to send some kind of the data right here, right? So let's try to make it async, and here we will put the product ID, right? This is going to be number, and in return we are returning something, right? So but right now we are not returning anything. That's perfectly fine. Let's try to implement this this get product details, right? So here inside this card service, go to the card service, and here we are going to call that one, right? So const product, wait, get product details. So here what we are going to pass, we are going to pass the product ID, input.the product ID. And then what we need to do here, while we are returning this product information, we will be returning something like this, right? Return, let's say stock will be, let's say 10, right? Some kind of the product information, let's say price will be 100, let's say, all right? So this kind of stuff we are going to return, right? So though we have not made any kind of call to the microservice, but just to try to satisfy our this service first, right? Then what we are going to do, we will check like if the product.stock is greater than 0 or greater than whatever the unit we are passing it right here. Let's say input.quantity, right? Then we are here, if we find like product stock is less than our input stock, then what we can say, we'll be throwing some kind of error, throw new error, and we will say product is out of stock, right? if we see the product stock is less than our input quantity, then we will throw this error from here. Otherwise, we are going to create our cart item from here. Perfect. So what we can do, instead of throwing this error, we need to send some kind of meaningful error. Every time we cannot send the generic error, right? So already we have implemented this kind of errors, the customized error in our one of the microservice. So what I can do, I'm going to stop right here, and I'll be adding all these errors to our microservices, body microservice, catalog microservice, and order microservice. Because while we are going to call this catalog microservice from here, from get product details, then we need to send some meaningful error, right? Then only it can be possible to communicate with the body microservice in a meaningful way, right? So let's try to do that. Then I'm gonna take a quick break to make all these changes, and I'll see you in another episode. Bye-bye.